Right, so I'm glad I put in this disclaimer after the keynote. I'm really enjoy being part of the R community, and I recently made a move from an academic position to a commercial one, and I wanted to share my story here for people who may be in a similar position. But please know, it's just one person's story, right? So I'll talk about using big data in a commercial setting, but there's plenty of people who do this in academia. And I'll talk about using R and lots of open source tools in the commercial setting, and there's lots of people in commercial roles who don't have access to this sort of thing. So there's no, this is only academic and that's commercial. It's just an experience, and I really hope you can get something from it. So this was my story. Again, you can sort of see why I'm laughing after the keynote. I was a cognitive scientist at the University of Sydney, very much an applied statistician. And towards the end of my fellowship, I was a little uncertain about my future there and wanted to try a commercial side. And I was fortunate enough to land a role as a data scientist at Booking.com, which is the world's largest travel accommodation site. So every day we're helping connect millions of people to a place to stay, flights, how to get there, and things they can experience when they're there. So very much academic to commercial jump. And having made that pretty recently, right, this is really the motivation for my talk. I get asked this a lot, particularly from people still in academia. Hey, as someone with a background like you, like an R user, how do I do something similar if I were interested, right? What skill sets do I need? Do I have what it takes, and so on. And of course you can think of the reverse side on the commercial being, should I consider academic applicants? It's hard to judge people without relevant industry or technological experience. So what changed for me? I think it boils down to three reasonably general things, and I'll walk you through each of them, how I used R, what I had to learn, and what I sort of lent away from moving commercial. Technology. What technology was I using, and how was I using it? Me, in my academic setting, yeah, I was very much in control of my data. Like Bill was saying, right, I very carefully thinking about sampling, data collection, but also working with relatively small data sets, so things that could fit in text files on my laptop or machine. And because of this, I can use R for everything, right? R was my engine for everything. The files were in the computer, so to speak. When I hit Booking.com, life got a little crazy. So I found myself facing this really unique technology stack. Data is massive. We're talking petabytes, and it's distributed across computers in warehouses and things. There's all sorts of technology used to manage, store, interact with this data. And even if you enter a commercial setting that doesn't use big data like this, that organization will still have a unique technology stack, right? So R becomes a tool to solve problems, but it must exist in another ecosystem of technologies. And you have to learn the role of R in that ecosystem and how it can interface. So what I got to lean on making this move was my capacity to learn. It may surprise everyone in this room, but academics tend to be pretty good at learning stuff. So if you're in a position like I was, and you're seeing all these things that at this conference like Spark and Hadoop, and you've got no idea what's going on, don't worry, right? You've learned lots of complex things before. You can do it again. It's no different. So that was fine. I got to keep R as a tool for data science, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next section. And RStudio and Tidyverse as tools in a commercial setting are just out of this world. And I know I'm really preaching to the converted in many ways here. But as an example, for people who don't use big data or databases, you can write dplyr syntax, which works fine on text files, but then that gets converted into all sorts of other technologies in the back end as well. So I can write the same code, but have it executed across petabytes of data with a technology called Spark. It's awesome, right? So having these skills up front makes the transition pretty easy. What was new to me were all these other technologies, right? How did R fit in? How do I interface with this unique tech stack? So I had to learn all these packages for helping me interface R with other things. These are just some examples of things I use every day. DBI, ODBC, Reticulate for Python, SparklyR for this thing called Spark. The list goes on. Please don't hunt me down with fire and, you know. But what I did lean away from a little was the feeling that R is for everything. And it doesn't mean I don't love R. I really do. It's what I use for pretty much everything. But I'm now very much of the opinion that someone should be using the tools that helps them to solve the problem best. And most of the time for me, that's Python, but some, R, wow. I'm really glad I picked up on that, you know, because I could have just kept going and you would have been sitting there super politely and like, this guy, get out, get out. It's most of the time R, but sometimes it's Python and sometimes it's Scala or JavaScript or whatever it is that I need to do my job. That's an icebreaker. Planned it. Okay, purpose. I think this is probably the biggest thing moving from academic to commercial. Why am I doing my work? What's the purpose of my work? Why am I getting paid? Well, hopefully if you're in academia, you're also getting paid. There were times where I wasn't, but anyway, that's a whole nother story. In the academic setting, my primary objective was really pushing knowledge, right? New technologies, new techniques. The practical application wasn't at the forefront of what I was doing. And sometimes academic work can take years to be widely applicable, right? Because it's really cutting edge stuff. On the commercial side, being practical is very often your objective, right? You're making a product or a service that you want people to use and engage with and enjoy, and in some capacity, of course, pay for, right? And I think this was really nicely summed up the other night. I caught up with a friend from academia who asked, hey, can you tell me some of the really cool cutting-edge techniques you're using at booking and machine learning or whatever? I said, look, we're doing some really cutting-edge stuff, but we don't dive into it. You know, in academic setting, I would dive into a big structural equation model or a mixed effects model. Nowadays, if you can imagine, we rank hotels on our website. I wouldn't dive into months of building a deep neural network to achieve a super duper accuracy and have developers integrated into the product and then, you know, to find it slows the website. I might do something really simple like rank by review score, right? See how it's improving experience and iteratively work in a practical way. So it's a very different mode of thinking. I also like his sort of cheesy grin, so I wish I had that sort of hair, but anyway. So the thing that really helped me make the move was R as a tool for lightning fast data analysis and insight generation. And every day in academia, you're working with data and turning it into knowledge. And this is so valuable in a commercial setting. I cannot think of another language that does this as well. And I work with people who use anything you can think of. I have someone I work with who uses it. R is king for this sort of thing. So it's super valuable in commercial setting. But I did have to learn to think pragmatically, to take sort of smaller practical steps, and more about scaling fundamentals, right? Taking a simple models like simple regression and scaling that to petabytes of data, right? And making it accessible to people all around the world. I did have to learn how to use R in production, right? This is a really challenging thing. And machine learning. So I have a statistics background. If you're finding yourself in a similar position, I'm not saying you have to learn machine learning because it's the answer to everything. I still use a lot of statistics. It's valuable. But machine learning, for me, helped me think more in practical terms. It's about trying to solve practical problems for the most part. So do invest a bit of time if you're not familiar with it. So here again, I'm using packages every day like SparklyR, H2O, Keras, TensorFlow, the list sort of goes on. What went down was this preference for complexity, right? And R for theoretical problems, which I touched on. Okay, communication. So I'm connecting to different technologies. I'm working with a slightly different mindset. Now, how am I communicating what I'm doing to people? In the academic setting, I'm mostly communicating with peers, right? People who understand the topic that I study, the techniques I'm using. I'm doing this communication in a fairly structured thing, like a journal article with an APA manual this big sitting next to my desk. And it's to disseminate knowledge, so there's a fair amount of text. In the commercial setting, most of my communication is to non-technical stakeholders, right? You don't get hired into an organization as an expert in data analysis to tell other data analysts what you're doing, right? You're there to support people without that skill set. Your purpose, it could be often to share insights to support decision making, but you're communicating with data for all sorts of other reasons, like daily monitoring, real-time events, and this is where dashboards come in. So what I got to lean on that I brought with me, I was effective at communicating, right? I'd lectured, I'd written papers, I'd taught students. These things were very valuable. And sometimes it's hard, I know if you're coming from academic, to think of how to put these in a CV or showcase, but they're very valuable skills. And R for data visualization. ggplot2, R Markdown. For me, they were must-haves. There are, of course, other tools you can use, but these are what I brought with me. What was new is that I had to be engaging as well as informative, right? So when you're communicating with peers who have an interest in what you're doing, that's the motivation, right? But when you're communicating with non-technical stakeholders, you have to engage them in what the data has to offer and help them to derive meaning from it quickly. So you can go beyond black and white, which is nice. There's no APA manual, at least not at booking.com. Right, and you can go well beyond static. So it was really nice. I'm glad that Thomas's keynote was this morning, because we do use all these sort of tools, Shiny, Plotly, ggAnimate. Like you said, they're sort of party icebreakers, but you need that with these sort of conditions. I dropped APA formatting and never looked back. Enough of that. Never want to say it again. So the last thing I want to mention is that I had a unique set of skills as an academic. For me, I did a lot of psychometrics, so this is the science of sort of measurement, particularly behavioral measurement, which at booking.com is a useful thing to have. And I wanted to bring that with me, but I, of course, had to face all this new technology, this new mindset. So I wanted to bring that with me and also share the things I was learning with people coming after me, right, to speed up their entry into the organization. And so I think the best thing I had when I made this move was the ability to write R packages. And if you're in a similar position, you're interested in moving and you don't know how to write R packages, there's this fantastic book, R Packages by Hadley Wickham. It's totally free. The link's on the slides. I'll put them up later. I learned how to write packages with this. I have a hex sticker on that awesome Australia wall now of a package I submitted to CRAN years ago, all just by following this book, right? So check it out. It's not as challenging as you might think. Anyway, so at booking.com, me and a few colleagues, all with academic backgrounds, wrote some packages to tackle these challenges, and it was really coincidence. I worked out that they map quite nicely to these problems that we were facing. So we have Booker Data, which is all about, it lets our users connect to any of our database infrastructure in a uniform way, right? And when we make changes on the back end, like we recently in Europe, I'm based in Amsterdam, GDPR came into effect and we had to set up a lot of new security through our databases, so we could address that in the package, and the R users and the data scientists and analysts weren't encumbered at all. They could just continue working. Right? Booker Stats is about scaling fundamental statistics and algorithms. So we promote pragmatic ways of working, but also allow everyone to start building complexity on top of it. And Booker Viz is all about communication, right? So we have corporate color palettes. I had a blog post about this. It just keeps coming up, so you might have seen it. If not, I can just throw it around, because why not? I like doing that. And we have our markdown templates, Shiny templates, you name it. So here I was able to package the things I was learning to help not only everyone coming after me, but everyone who was already there. And also it allowed me to start bringing my unique skill set that didn't translate immediately, but I could slowly incorporate it as I was learning these new technologies and facing these new challenges. So definitely recommend it. Okay, this is just the sort of summary wrap-up. If you're in the position you're looking to move, first of all, by all means, please come and talk to me. I'm a very talkative person, so don't hesitate. If you're an R user, don't be afraid. It will help you face new technologies and practical problems and non-technical stakeholders. You've got a really amazing tool set at your disposal. What you need to do is show the world that you're ready to use these things and to keep learning. Right? So don't just go and do the demo of Shiny or H2O. Find a practical problem and use whatever technologies you have to learn to solve it, and then tell people. Right? Write a blog, put it on GitHub, send it out on Twitter. Right? You really need to show the commercial side that you're ready to use these things in a practical way. And if you can, be prepared to package your skills and empower others. It's one of the best things you can do. I know I'm preaching to the converted probably in this room again, but if you're looking for talent, often have a think. Do you need someone with industry experience? If you already have a team of people who know your infrastructure well, then adding someone else with that skill set sort of has diminishing returns, right? So there is value in bringing in people who have to learn and have a diverse skill set. And for sure, academic IUs tend to be able to turn data into value really fast. Very valuable. But, I wouldn't recommend anyone hiring blindly. That's not a very good strategy. So just be sure, you need to look for evidence of strong data foundations and ability to learn. And for the academic side, this is where where it helps to showcase your skill sets. And with that, thank you very much. Do I have time for... I've got time for maybe one question, but yeah?
You talked about R for production.
Yep.
I guess I've got no real idea about what that means or what R would be weak at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So I suppose to productionize something can mean a few things depending on where you are. If we look at the most straightforward case, it's maybe about putting a machine learning model into your product. Right? This would probably be the most common case. So if you say build a model in R and you have this object, that's actually very challenging to integrate into a tech stack built on other things, right? So technologies like H2O, they'll spit out a Java model for you, which is really easy to integrate. At Booking, we have the fortune of a really great engineering team, so data scientists can pretty much integrate whatever they want, but this is by no means a common thing. So yeah, you're stuck sometimes with what you've got in R and what you need to put into your product. I'll pass it off to Joe. Thanks.
Thank you.